Hey everybody, welcome to Losing Your Mind with Chris Cosentino. I'm your host, Chris Cosentino. We are here to talk about people that inspire, and all my guests are inspiring in so many different ways. And I'm really looking forward to digging deep into how they got to where they are, to the top of their game, how hard they've worked, how much they've given up, and how they're giving back. So without further ado, here's our next guest. Hey everybody, welcome to Losing Your Mind with Chris Cosentino. Boy, I wet the bed on that intro. I am here and we can't edit, so there you go. I'm here with my friend Dillon. Dillon, help me pronounce your last name. Is Osleger?
Osleger. Yeah, you're spot on.
Okay. I'm the worst at pronouncing names, as most people can't pronounce mine, so I want to make sure, and of course I screw it up anyways. So one of the things I'm super excited about, Dillon and I know each other through mountain biking, but Dillon's also an avid teleskier. But the thing that really I think connected both of us was the conversation over the ecosystem around food, soil, snow, and how we as outdoor recreationists impact the environment that we love so much, whether it's a mountain bike trail, whether it's the wax you choose to use on your skis, and if it's going to leave imprint on the mountain after the season's over. Dillon has these answers, and it's been a lot to learn for me, and I just keep going back and pestering him, and I'm hoping I'm not, but I'm learning a lot along the way, and I'm hoping that Dillon can share a lot more of this with you guys as our conversation moves forward. So Dillon, I think you're frozen. Nope, you're not anymore.
No, I'm here. No, that's a lot. I hope I should have brought more notes, more answers for you, but it's all right.
So first off, you are from Truckee, right?
Yes, sir.
And we met you ripped past me like I was standing still at Downieville. Let's just be crystal clear on that. But you've really been focusing a lot on how not only the public and outdoor recreation affects our environment, but also we talked a lot during the pandemic about soil and erosion and the destruction of soil due to cattle rearing or industrial farming. And let's kind of, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle, and I want to start with how you got interested in this subject in particular, because it's not something that you normally hear from an avid outdoorist, other than we want to end climate change.
Yeah. No, I mean, and something to clear up, like, you're not afraid to cook downhill. Like, I have seen you moving downhill at Downieville, and that's quick times. And it's good. I think that there's a lot to connect on, because it's not often the fast guys and the fast gals who want to sit down afterwards and talk about soil and their bar company, and like where the ingredients come from. That's pretty rare. So no, I've just been fortunate to have the right people around me to want to connect on the things that are close to heart. Like right off the bat, you kind of hit it with soil. I think that's probably the thing that ties me to a lot of it. And it's funny, Downieville really is like, that was my youth. That was my young days, was being on those same trails, learning from Greg Williams and putting my hands in the earth. But if you ride away from that racing venue, you're pretty quickly in agricultural land, right? Like, you're in the Sierra Valley. I mean, you're looking at dairy and ranching, pigs, sheep. It's all old, like, European immigrants. And that's just what I grew up with.
Dillon, not to interrupt, but can you please tell everybody who Greg is and what he does?
Yeah, and Greg Williams is the executive director for the Sierra Buttes Trail Stewardship. Greg was born up in between Northern California and Southern Oregon, to a dying indigenous tribe, and brought kind of that land stewardship culture to Downieville and created probably the preeminent mountain biking destination in the West Coast. They're not small things, right? Like, how do you describe that man? I think that's it in a sentence, but he's a big figure to fill shoes, and a lot to learn from in young days, to look up to and still look up to. And he does it with a smile and a laugh, and isn't always at the front of a microphone or in magazine articles. So I think I just grew up in that culture of agriculture and ranching and respecting, you know, people who use their hands for work. And I followed that for a while, you know, making money, helping out on ranches. I was ski guiding a lot. Can't say I was that great at school in the younger years. Like I was focused on being a professional athlete, which was great for a time, you know, like I got to race around the world on a mountain bike, and I still do. I ski, you know, North and South America, and do the whole telemark thing, ski guiding and just as a professional athlete. And that's a dream. But at a certain point, you know, there's more to see beyond just going to the same places and the same races again and again. So I got my undergrad degrees in Bozeman in Montana simply because I like skiing.
Bad place to do it. Oh my God. Talk about, you needed a snorkel, I'm sure, most of the days to go out and ski.
When it wasn't like negative 40 degrees, which I do not miss at all, but it's that same culture, right? Like it's like you're in this place that lives around everyone skiing 100+ days a year, but the people right outside of town again are just ranching. Like they don't really care about like your ski days. They're there like skiing a couple days a year in jeans and like a Carhartt jacket, which is sweet. Like you just see the breadth of people who like where outdoor recreation has come from. And obviously it's like, you know, migrated to Gore-Tex and being rad and flips, but its roots are still there, and those people are just connected to the land. Yeah, so after I like was a ski bum for 5 years and faking the whole academic thing, I started working with Nature Conservancy, just figuring out like what the deal was, you know, cattle on public lands, regenerative agriculture, how the whole system works. Like why are there cows on some trails and not on others? Why are cows allowed in wilderness? Like, you know, how does that culture tie into
that's a great question, because I've always wondered that. Like, for instance, riding in Crested Butte, Colorado, you'll come ripping around the corner and you can't go forward. Like you got to go back whence the way you came, because they're not moving.
No, they're not moving along. I bring my cattle dog along with me nowadays because he can like move them forward. I was with Sarah Sturm recently, and we brought her dog out for a ride in Durango, and that dog just chased cattle for half an hour, just moving them down the trail. And we rode through literal cow shit for like 30 minutes, just because her dog was just pushing these cattle down the trail, and we just had to follow them. It was a great start to a bikepacking trip when like you start out with everything kind of covered in gross stuff. Just it's exactly how I wanted my bikepacking trip to go. But yeah, I mean, it's weird, right? Like there's a weird intersection of like cultures. Like we're here with these like weird kids with sleeping bags and tents on our bike, and there's a guy in full camo on an ATV ranching cattle in the same place. And it's like neither of us are here for lesser reasons. We're just here for different cultures. I've always found that really cool. So yeah, I think that's like I've gone down this path of just connecting the academic background of earth science with that recreation. And you know, we're in a time now where the places we all get outside are rapidly changing, whether it's, you know, our development and increasing, you know, homes and that interface, or if it's forest fires, or if it's floods, pandemics, you name it. That all influences the way we can recreate outside and be with each other. So yeah, timeliness, more just a personal curiosity.
So in regards to that, I mean, it's a pretty precarious balance, right? The ecosystem of outdoor recreation, it's a very unique thing, because the outdoor recreation individual is always looking for the newest gear, the most modern, the lightest, right? There's that push to have the newest, greatest, fastest, whether it be a bicycle or a ski or a binding or the clothing or a new tent. Or so we're just, as much as we want to save that world we're in, that we love, that adventure world we go to, we're also creating part of that problem. Like, are we recycling those things? Are we just buying to have the new? Or is what we have broken and needs to be replaced? Or, you know, there's these definite unique components to that we don't really see the bigger picture of sometimes, when, like that old saying, you can't see the forest through the trees, right? And that, I think, actually plays really well into this bit here, because wax on your skis definitely has an impact on the environment after the snow melts.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the water you drink, right? Those are the fish that I catch. Comes right back around. And it's our own actions, like you're saying, those individual choices. But at the same time, it's like you're talking about not seeing, the larger picture through a dense, constant need for gear and for being rad and for new company things. And there is that larger picture, like, are we being sold like a false truth, right? Like, I love design. Like, I think that there's really cool art out there, but at the same time, like, I'm waiting for every bike to just come in black, so you don't know what the model year is. Like, there's no difference in your 2021 to 2020. Like, if they were both painted black, everyone would just shrug their shoulders and be like, I don't care.
Well, that's why I ride a metal bike. Like, I purposefully chose, and you know this, I ride titanium, small frame builder, because I don't need to replace it. Right? Like, but when I do need to replace it, I can give it back to the frame builder and he can recycle that tubing. It's a lot harder to do that. And gosh, this is actually a really dangerous conversation we're having for both of us right now.
I'm up front. I taunt my sponsors all the time. They all know that, like, I'm the worst, because I'm going to tell people to go buy like old gear, and it's like, it's fine. Like, you're always going to need a new drivetrain, or, like, don't go ruin yourself. But like you're saying though, I mean, I'll be upfront here. Like, I ride for Specialized. I ride for Rapha, for Wahoo, Fat Tire. These are companies that support my messaging, but I'm pretty blunt with them that, like, I'm not here to sell things for them. Like, I love made in America, made in USA, small frame builders. Like, the reason they're down, and, like, I mean, aside from being one person in a shop, like, they're not getting subsidies, right? Like, they're not getting the tax loopholes of the giant guys. So their stuff's more expensive, right? And they're not shifting off the buck to Taiwan, and that's good. Like, if you can afford it, like, do what you can according to your means. Like, if you can afford it, go buy from a small frame builder in the US. You're going to get a sweet bike, and it's going to be better for the environment, right? It's funny. Like, yeah, it is those small things where I'm not afraid to poke those buttons sometimes.
There's always, it's like, yep. And then like, I'm going to get yelled at later, I'm sure, by somebody. But no, I think it's really all these little things we, and you and I have talked about this a lot off air and like in our conversations, like, you did a great documentary about soil, Specialized, worked with you on this. And I think it's really important. And for you folks out there who are watching or listening to this, I will include that a link to that through this podcast. It's really important that you guys see this. And I want you to talk about how that came to be, because I think it's a really, it's a super informative, but it doesn't beat you over the head. And I think that's what's really great about how you communicate the messaging. I don't feel like I'm getting hit in the face with a baseball bat and being told I'm a douchebag. You're informing people in a really great way to make them want to grab onto it, right? To be a part of it, because they realize, oh yeah, I am affecting this and I can change things. And then they do like they hug it, they bring it in, instead of being like, man, they made me feel like shit. Like, I think it's less apt to get people to join to get involved when they're made to feel bad.
Totally. No, you're hitting the nail on the head, and I appreciate the kind words. It's it's hard, and I think I learned from my mistakes, like we all do, right? I made those mistakes in the past. Like, I was a boring scientist for a while, being like, here's the facts, feel bad about them. I'm the scientist, you're a person, like, I have the lab coat. And those are the mistakes, man. Like, at the end of the day, I've realized you don't need a lab coat to see changes in the environment.
You just froze, boss.
Oh, can you see me now?
Yeah, just
okay, cool.
The last thing you just said was you don't need a lab coat to see changes in the environment.
Oh, perfect. That's where I left off. Yeah. Great. So no, I think that's the big thing is anyone can figure it all out. And no one's an idiot, right? Like, and no matter what side of the aisle.
Differ on that last comment. There are some.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's fine. We can beg to, yeah. And I actually probably agree with you on this, but you know, it's funny in that, like, treaty, we can all agree, you know, we all want good trails to ride. We all want clean air to breathe. We all want clean water, and we all want to ski. Like, and there's no difference between any of us there. Like, if the word climate is what's like dividing us, I'm not even going to use it. Like, I don't care. There are bigger issues at hand, you know. And that's kind of the funny thing is, like, especially mountain bikers, especially trail runners, like people that are outdoors all the time, and skiers for that matter, like, people get engaged. You know, people come to trail work days and they want to have money for food banks. That's sick. Like, you know, and you might not be doing something with the word climate in it, but you're making the world a better place. And through that, you're probably impacting the climate. It kind of goes way back to when we talked about soil. Like, neither you or I buy good meat because we're like, yeah, we're climate activists. Like, we do it because we care about fair wages, you know, healing the soil, keeping that culture alive, like, and people taste better meat, right? Like, you're just making the world a better place, but also you just captured a shit ton of carbon in the soil. Like, that's all you did. Like, but you're a climate activist, even if you don't want to be.
It's funny that climate activist is such a touchy word, right? That's not a word, words. It's a very touchy subject. People get really revved up about it. And it's like, it's not, I mean, honestly, I think the term global warming should have never been used. It should have been climate change. That, I think people would have been more adjusted to agreeing with, right? Because people are like, well, it's really cold here, so I don't see how it's global warming. We got more snow this year than we did last year. There's no global warming. No, but all the snow came in one storm and you couldn't get out of your house for 2 weeks. Like, what is that?
The thing.
Right?
It sucks. Like, that's the thing is, it sucks for everybody, right? Like, no matter what, like, if your power is going out, like, my internet was out this morning because I have a fat rainstorm sitting on top of us. And the last time we got rain in October was 2016, 17, and it all came as snow. Like, but here I am just like getting smashed by water, just making mud outdoors. And that's not a great start to ski season.
No, but it's, you know what? We're not going to complain about having water.
No, not in California. I'll take all of this right now. Like, we had 1.3 million acres burned on either side of my house this year. You know, like, I live between the Dixie and the Calder fire, and this is putting those out finally. But, you know, that's the thing is, like, that documentary and everything that I'm trying to do nowadays is really just showing people it's not about feeling bad about yourself, right? Like, I think the easiest way to look at it is it's addition versus multiplication when it comes to climate. As individuals, like, I could recycle everything. I could live in like a small hut and burn like a few pieces of wood for warmth. And my annual, you know, export of carbon would go from the average of 16 tons to going down to 12. Like, so what? That's like 9 zeros past the decimal place of the US's annual emissions. But hey, like, if you and I vote for a city council to do electric transport, or not put in that, like, not burn, you know, the pile of trash in the dump, that's a lot. If we all commuted, like, if we did 1% more of all of our commuting as instead of cars right now. So instead of driving for those short trips, if we just replace 1% of those trips as a nation, that's 400 times what Specialized puts out in a year.
That's crazy.
So, like,
numbers are crazy, dude.
It's just totally different, and it's not an individual thing. Like, sure, live your values, like, do that. I mean, it makes me think every day if I care, like, but that's more about, you know, paying fair wages for food. It's not about trying to save the earth by like bringing my own reusable mug to the coffee shop, you know.
That's so funny. It's like, you think about, and that's little things, and it's, you know, I don't think people remember, it's like, you bring that reusable mug, they give you a discount, which is, you know, they're rewarding you for giving back. But I think then the other thing is, it's like, it's just not another thing in the landfill. Like, we keep, and I don't know if people realize, big picture right now, I just saw some detailed articles about what's going to start going up. So meat prices are going to go up 48%. To-go containers, aka folks, all those paper cups that you get at your local coffee shop with your barista. You like that one? A little fancy.
That's me with my pour over and a rocket espresso right now. So I'll roll with that. I'll grow a mustache.
You think about it, all those prices are going to go up. They said paper cups and all to-go containers are going to go up 24% because
I'm going to go invest right now. I know what to invest in. The stuff that's going to be more expensive. Yeah.
And then there's the whole other issue. Part of the reason the meat cost is going up is due to land, water, lack of ivermectin. I know that sounds crazy, but the ivermectin, as you know, doctors will tell you, if you do not have your animals properly treated for worms or they can't go into the food system, right?
Yeah.
Part of the so there's all these little pieces that are going to change the fiscal and the availability dynamics. But then if we keep on putting and rushing to make more to put, it's not a big deal. I got a coffee mug. It's made of metal. If I break it, I break it. You gotta get a jug and fill it with water and put it in your car. You don't need a plastic bottle. It's little things. I don't think it's that hard.
No, and it's not. And that thing is I think as a society, we're really good at hiding what we burn, right? No one sees the gas power plant for the most part. No one sees, the dumps or the burning of all the methane coming out when they just light old tires on fire in the middle of the desert.
That shit scares me. I saw a video of that the other day.
Yeah.
Black smoke is just oh dear Lord. What?
That's our reality. That's what we do as a species. And we just hide it from everyone, right? No one knows where all their old rubber goes because not all of us are Googling videos of tire burning, right?
If you want to see something that will blow your mind, go online and look at what was it that I saw? It's tire fire or tire fire disposal, right? Or tire disposal fires. I think that's what it was. And it'll give you a whole new meaning of oh my God, what is going on with tires?
We just don't think about it. Tires, cups, Pacific gyre of plastic in the ocean. It is all hidden. And I think that's the crazy thing. We all have these opportunities to buy things every day. We could be buying ski wax or a bike or, a coffee mug, and it comes from somewhere. And at the end of its life, it goes somewhere. Things don't just disappear because the garbage man came. And that's what we really have to reckon with. It does
disappear. Right? We just don't know where it goes.
It's not on my plate anymore, right? And that's what's wild is this whole thing kicked off. I'm a nerd about dirt, and I still stick to a lot of the childhood where it's I love digging and building trail. Sign me up. I love going to communities and working with them to, design something new and cool or restore some old historic trail that hasn't been around since the 80s and creating these stupid long routes. But that said, I got tired. All my trails burnt. I lost a ton of trail to forest fire, and then I rebuilt it, and then I lost it again to forest fire. And I was kind of well, that was a few thousand hours of volunteer time. Where'd it all go? And there's a lot of me's, let's just say, that are there in the woods hanging out with a chainsaw and some hand tools like a McLeod, chipping away and trying to keep all those trails for everybody. But if you like trails, things like that matter, right? You might be breathing smoke. I tried to go race up in Transcascadia this last month, the end of last month, and 2 weeks before the race, half of our course burned. They were just we're pivoting, we'll figure it out. I was all right, cool, it's smoky, it's my lungs hurt. These trails are all old moto trails. We're fixing them the day before. It's just the reality of where we live. I'm sure if you traveled to go ride, I saw Rebecca's Private Idaho, people were racing in 200 AQI. That hurts.
That's not good.
Not good for you.
No, it's beyond. I think there's big picture things, and I think I want you to talk a little bit about the soil and how you were talking about the crossover and how you wanted to see the grazing process and how it gives back, because I think that's really interesting. And I think, being able to take cattle and have them graze certain lands is restorative, but also is preventative of forest fires, and was part of what,
Yeah.
I think this is really, really interesting parts, whether it's sheep, goats, beef, you've got, and then you can integrate chickens, and then there's just a whole slew of cool things that can happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's the honest thing to see is like, it took me a while to, even though I came from that culture, to see the value. Like, why do they deserve to like let their cattle, onto public lands or their sheep, and it's going to mess up some trails or leave some cow shit on there, but whatever. Like at the end of the day, like I love their culture. I love getting like good, well-made local meat, and like knowing that came from someone who has lived on the land, understands the land. And that's kind of that reality to understand is like soil's a living thing. To most of us, it's just a little ribbon of dirt that we ride or run on, which is all well and good. Like, but within all of that, you look to the forest around you and you see this like a breathing organism, right? It captures carbon. Like the soil is probably one of the largest, because the ocean is heating up, the soil in forest actually is the largest carbon sink we have in the world. So all those farms you go past, all those ranches, that's our hope right now. And that comes from cattle being on there and, eating cover crops and anything else and putting it back, passing it through their system and putting it right back in the soil, and it's become oil. We need that, right? Like what else is conservation, I guess, is this funny word because no one can define it. Like I asked 10 people what conservation means, and all of them shrug their shoulders and they're like, keeping things the way they are for the future generations, or like nature's a resource. Great, but like if it's so open-ended, clearly there are a lot of ways to do it. And for me, I see these large, shrub lands and sagebrush lands, chaparral, all throughout California, through Nevada, and everyone's like, oh yeah, why don't you put a mountain bike trail there? I could, but also like I know that ranchers use that as public land, and that land's pretty all right without us on it, right? Like we're all reaping those benefits. And when the cattle are like going through, they're eating the underbrush. That's stuff that's not going to burn, right? That's stuff that's not going to, like if a fire rips through and there's a whole set of canopy, the fire is just going to climb that ladder and get to the trees. But if cattle are there, you don't have that middle step in that canopy. So the fire just burns along the base of the trees. Trees are usually fine. Like they're not going to get bothered by a regular fire coming through.
There's something that I read, actually, excuse me, I didn't read, that my wife talked to me about, and it was about how the native tribes used to have these type of controls, whether it be through animals or through small burning, to prevent exactly what you're talking about. It was the native way of preventing the fire from rising and igniting the top of the trees. So
spot on. Yeah, it's so cool. You actually live in like the original place for that. Like up north around Sonoma, I went to a course actually pretty recently where like people from the indigenous tribes and from offshoots of the Miwok showed us their fire practices. And they had drip torches where they literally would just light pine sap covered boughs on, and they would just like walk around to their grass fields and they would light pine cones on fire and just huck them, and they would just light exactly what they're aiming for. Like basically they've been doing modern day firefighting practices, but better for a very long time.
But it's interesting because there was a point in which that was stopped and they were told they weren't allowed to do that anymore by the National Forest Service because they didn't understand the practices and they thought that they were actually igniting the forest fires.
Dude, this is like the root of our issue in Western United States right now. Like that's the issue with, Gifford Pinchot's a cool guy, the first head of the Forest Service. But he's kind of the inspiration for Smokey the Bear. And yeah, I mean, early, like Santa Barbara is a great example. Back in the 1800s, if they caught a Chumash lighting a fire, the penalty was death. Like you were put to the rope if you were caught doing your indigenous practices. And then they decided to start like taking out every single fire. Like if a fire started, they were going to put it out. And now, like, I think in our forest, we have 3 of the top 10 largest like fires in the last 20 years of history, because we've just let everything grow and locked it all up. There's no ranching, there's no indigenous fire practices, and it just burns through and it torches everything from like the lowest shrub to the tallest Douglas pine at 10,000 feet.
Well, I think that's interesting because now they're going back to those methods and they're learning those methods again. And it's real. There's that realization of doing controlled burns and pre-burns and, you know, making sure, but it's taken a time of that not happening to see this mass destruction. And yes, we go through cycles of growth and death and rebirth, but not on the scale that we've seen.
Yeah, no, entirely. And I think that's
scary.
It's to show people that it's incredibly scary. I mean, you'll appreciate this. Like, you know, Christopher Blevins, and now the kid's like World Cup superstar, and like, you know, he's great. Like, but I met, and you know, world champ. Sorry, he has a rainbow jersey now. But I met Christopher when he was an undergraduate at Cal Poly, like living, you know, an hour away in Santa Barbara, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna come do this FKT." And I kind of shrugged my shoulders and I was like, that's cool, but that trail it ends on actually just burned. So no, you're not, like, unless you're going to walk down it. And he was like, okay, well, what do we do? And I was like, well, you drive down here with your bike and I'll carry the tools and you come help me work on it. And so I've got this like this tall XC World Cup athlete who's probably supposed to be doing intervals somewhere far away from me in Europe. And I'm like, yep, here's a tool, like explaining to him, you know, like what a McLeod is. And, you know, this is what we have to do to get these trails back that you train on to win, you know, World Cups at like an international level, to go to the Olympics. And I had him out there in the rain, just like suffering along next to me, chipping in bench cut and looking at the whole thing. And once the trail was rebuilt, then I was like, yeah, you know, like you could do your FKT, but also I'm not going to give you car access. Like, I'm not going to open the gate to let you go see it via vehicle. So we're going to go do like a really slow riding day where like we did the whole route, but like had lunch at some Chumash cave paintings, like went to these old abandoned ranching cabins. We saw ranchers out there, went to like the old civilian conservation corps camps, and these eyes just opened, right? Like, it's a lot more than just like going fast on a bike. There's a lot that's behind it. But yeah, like, you know, I think that's the funny thing. It's like, as a sport right now, we're like, how fast did you go on Strava? Not like, you know, what did you put back in, or like, what did you see? And I think we're starting to see that.
I think that you know, the other day, it dawned on me, right? I'm never going to be the guy I was years ago, right? I'm never going to be that fast. I'm pushing 50, but I still love to push myself, right? And I realized it's not about, it took a while for me to get this into my brain. And I think when we were all up at Downeyville, that race, I wasn't, like, that climb was brutal, let's just be honest. And it was 112. So it was a little too much for my level popped and I was done. But the fun, the views, the smell in the air that you can smell, and folks are probably like, what the hell does it smell like? Sweat? No, it's there's that really, really unique smell of pine and really crispy sage, and you could smell it out there, right? It's very different. And then when you start to descend, then you start to get some moisture and some tree cover, and then things change again. And there's visuals everywhere. And I think that, as fast as I wanted to go, I think the funnest part for me was the adventure. It's like, because that was the first time I'd ever done it.
Really? I did not know that. Okay.
I'd never done Downeyville before.
Whoa. So you got the full experience in like one go, going really hard during a hot day.
Go on a hardtail, really hard, and like loving it because it was an experience. And I think that's what we've forgotten in a lot of ways, because when we first got our bike, right, as a kid, it was the first way for you to get the farthest away, first time you could get the farthest away from your parents you could, right? and it was about seeing new things.
Yeah, 100%. Just escaping. Like, I mean, I didn't have video games.
I've
I
never
didn't have. Yeah, you didn't. I mean, we didn't have Strava and like video games to play, so it was hop on your like, you know, hard, not even hardtail, hop on your fully rigid, like maybe well welded steel bike and just go, you know, like down some dirt road. Maybe you found a trail, but there was no way to find those trails unless you talked to people.
And friends, riding with friends in the middle of nowhere, like that is sense of adventure. And I think this is so cool to hear about Blevins having that like the deer in the headlights moment. Like, that's exciting to be able to see those cave paintings and like to see those things. That's an experience. Like, that's what it's all about. And I think the way that you have continued to get people to look at the environment that they're in a bigger picture is making everybody say, hey, we have to keep these things here, not just for the fact that we want to go from point A to point B to get an FKT. And for those of you who don't know what an FKT is, I'm sure there are folks, an FKT can mean one of two things: fastest known time or funnest known time. And I think Dylan and I are on the funnest known time level.
Oh yeah.
We're on that one. But fastest known time basically meaning they may want to do the Kokopelli Trail from one point to the next in the fastest known time. And it has to be unsupported and you suffer, right? So if you have a mechanical and you're stuck out there on your own, you're stuck out there and you got to do it. If you run out of water, well, then you're, you know, buzzards are
stare at your bike computer and just measure watts for like 6 hours. I mean, I can barely look at my computer for like 10 minutes. I was just riding in Colorado and me and Sarah stopped like halfway through a day underneath some really pretty like fall color aspens. And I pulled out a loaf of bread and some brie cheese and mussels. And I was like, yeah, I've got my like little Opinel knife. Like I'm ready to bike. And she was like, what are you doing? Like, why is this what you've brought? I was like, I'm not in a hurry. Like I'm here to hang out and look around. Like, you know, so.
You just said something that I haven't seen in a long time. And I think I like that. The leaves changing, the aspen leaves changing is fucking beautiful. For those who have never seen it, it is magical. It is beyond magical. Like, it's especially in Colorado because it's a sea of them for as far as the eye can see. Like, it's just, it's like a postcard, right? It's like almost like a cartoon.
It's insane. Like the yellows and reds.
Like the Fantasia.
Honestly, yeah. And I've gone and I lived in Montana for 6 years and I like would see this and I left, come back to California and I just forget like the whole fall, the whole month of September, October. I mean, I went up to Washington and the larch trees that are up in the northern Cascades, just this insane phosphorescent yellow that you just don't see anywhere else. And like, I just forget those colors exist.
Amazing.
We don't live in a place with a lot of seasons these days. Like there's like one aspen somewhere out in the forest near me here in Tahoe, but I'd probably have to go find it to like see what color it is this day of the week.
If there's any leaves left from all that rain.
Probably not. And that's the thing is like, it's important. Like, I don't want to discourage people from traveling, right? Like go to races, go to places and get a baseline. Like people only know change based on like what else they see, right? And I think that's what's so key to like my work, but also experience. Like if the weather's gradually changing bit by bit, you kind of just get used to it like a frog in a pot, right? Like it's getting warmer, but pretty slowly. That's a very French mother reference. I don't know if a lot of people get that not cooking reference, but or like lobster maybe in the US. I don't know.
I get you. I think everybody will.
Okay, you know what I'm saying. But that's the thing is like I want people, especially people who don't have access to nature, right? That's what frustrates me sometimes is like, I don't want to just show you videos of like these sweet places that I get to go race like my bike downhill or check out. Like I want that to like be part of a thing where I also work to get you access. Like you should, no matter your means, like you should be able to go out and go to a park by your house, see fall, like see birds and, you know change when you see it. I think that's the cool thing is like the world is where I go and ride my bike and ski right now. But I'm kind of most jealous of those people whose like outdoor world is a postage stamp and they just know every single thread in that postage stamp. Cause I don't get to do that very often. Like, so yeah, fall colors. They're good. They're a reminder.
So you were just at a really important meeting for POW, Protect Our Winters, which I think is a really, really pretty incredible organization that has been, I think, making some pretty big leaps and bounds, and has some really great folks working on it. Jeremy Jones was, or is, the founder, one of them. And why don't you talk a little bit about POW and how you're working with them, and what the big goal is? I mean, Protect Our Winters is more than just protecting the winter; it's protecting us always, because the whole thing in the summer.
Yeah, well, I mean, thankfully, a lot of the skiers and snowboarders are picking up bikes and getting into the whole thing, so they see the bigger picture. Yeah, I mean, talk about being awestruck, right? Like, you show up to this little campground in Buena Vista, Colorado, like middle of nowhere, and like you're setting up camp, and there's Jeremy Jones, like there's Caroline Gleich, like one of the preeminent female ski mountaineers. There's Rob Krar, he runs like hundreds of miles at a time, and I'm like, yeah, I ride mountain bikes, like, and they're like, damn, really? Like, that's insane. And it just like levels this playing ground where you're like, all right, cool, like let me just see what I can learn here. And yeah, I mean, it was bringing people together underneath the Protect Our Winters banner to share a lot of personal stories, to see, how do different people get affected? Because sure, skiers, right, snowboarders, you have less snowpack. That sucks. Like, that's not only our passion, but that's our vocation. Like, we need that to work. And at a larger level, that's how you make political change, like systemic change. Like, and POW takes many of us to Washington, to our local legislators, to state levels, and they let us tell our stories to these people who sit in an office all day and just talk to other elected officials in suits and ties, to understand that their constituents like need the climate to be under control. They need snow, they need less fires, they need clean air, they need clean water in order to make a living and in order to live a good life, right? And so Protect Our Winters, brought in lobbyists to talk us about, how do you as athletes, how do you as people with followings give this information, disseminate it out over social media or over video projects to make sure everyone feels empowered to send an email to your local, representative or to your federal senator, telling them like, what do you care about and why? And like, if they don't listen, you're going to vote them out and they're going to lose their job. And that's the last thing they want, right? Like, they're there for a paycheck. So yeah, Protect Our Winters, it was not only, a meeting to start bringing mountain bikers and cyclists into the fold to talk about climate, but at the same time, they brought hired consultants to talk about, representation and diversity, and, an equity in voices, and equity in access. And that was honestly, like, I learned a lot about just like sharing space and uplifting others, and, a variety of voices, and where I can shut up and learn, and where I can provide something that, maybe is useful to the world. That was a lot, and that Protect Our Winters is that opportunity, I think, for a lot of us, no matter what we do outdoors, to make a difference, to make those multiplication level changes that we're talking about there, rather than just recycling every now and then, but, getting more bike paths, cutting down on fossil fuel use, going toward electric vehicles and an electrical grid, civilian conservation corps. All these things are like right there. They're being voted on right now. And we just don't get that information a lot. We're kind of cut off as a sport. And so hopefully from this meeting, like what I hope to do, what a few other cyclists hope to do, I'll cut this window off in a second here too. But we hope to bring that empowerment
down on you. Thank you. Shining the
this
light
is like finally some sun after a lot of not sun for the past like many days, Oh gosh. But yeah, it's funny. That's the reality, is that people don't feel empowered in the bike industry. Like, people feel very cut off on that whole side of things, and you shouldn't. You should realize that every single voice matters, and that you're the one who holds the keys to someone's job, who makes all those decisions at the high level, and they have to listen to you.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that are really interesting. It's like the cycling industry definitely, or cycling, as you know, definitely has the feel of an elitism sport, and so does winter sports due to access. And those things are changing, and they're changing quickly, which is a really amazing and lovely change.
I agree.
But I think one of the things that has been, for a lot of folks, a little bit difficult to understand about POW is they automatically, you hear protect our winters, and then it comes off to some folks as a situation where it's like, oh, there's a bunch of rich skiers that are just trying to save, their ski weekends. And I don't think that the bigger picture and the bigger implications are being viewed. And the way I see it, and which is why I'm trying to have some conversations with POW at this point, is because without snowpack, we definitely have long-term repercussions, right? You have faster soil erosion in the mountains, right? Yeah. We have less water in the valleys, which are feeding our cattle and also doing irrigation, which then produces food. So we have this trickle-down effects, and it's also our drinking water. So we have all these trickle-down effects that people aren't recognizing. So protect our winters isn't just about having snow sports. It's about having bigger, long-term availability and access to the basic needs of life. Just utilizing skiing or winter sports or sledding. I mean, it's all of the above, right? Let's just be honest. Yeah. It's all of the above. Like, there's not going to be ice skating to go out with your kids if it's too warm, right? We're not going to have sledding or snowball fights. Those are not elitist. Those are accessible to every, it's like, we have to start thinking bigger picture. And I think that's why having cyclists and athletes that are in the bigger picture of the world giving back. And, the 1% is a huge deal. You see that now, purchasing from places that give 1% back to the environment. Really, really important. And I think we definitely, as a whole, have the ability to make these changes, but very simply.
Man, you're spot on. That description of POW right there, like, you're hired. I'll email Jake right now and just let him know, like, hey, we're bringing Chris on. Like, but that's the thing, is like, you talk to a wide variety of people, and that's what we all like. That's what's hard, right? Like, and you're right. It's everyone. It is. I don't care if you're in hiking boots. I don't care if you're on a snowmobile, or if you just like going on a walk in the park with your dog. I think it's.
How about the guy who's going to want to use his jet ski in the summer in the lake?
Sick. I mean, that'd be great. But if it's a drought, like, good luck getting from the dock to the water, right? Like,
the lake's going away because we don't have the snowpack to fill the lake, so you can't put your boat in the lake.
And that's where like POW really comes in, right? Like, if you think about it, we all feel very individual with, like, we're getting impacted on the whatever we like to do, whether it's good food or recreation or just being outside. But if you look at people who identify as outdoor recreationalists in the US, that's 50 million individuals, like, just outdoor recreation. And it's more if you start bringing in other types of cycling, and it's more if you bring in the hikers. 50 million people is enough to essentially win a presidential election if all those people voted, if everyone knew what they were doing. Those people already identify. Where are you on election day? Like, if you sign up for POW's emails, all you're doing is getting empowered to make a better world. It's not about voting for climate change. It's about voting for fair pay for firefighters, right? Like, they should be making way more than $14 an hour. That's messed up.
That's horrifying. That's less than minimum wage.
That's horrifying. But my senator here, McClintock, has on quote said that's not skilled labor, and they do not deserve more than $14.50 an hour.
So why doesn't he sits on a desk? Why doesn't he go out and try to put out
exactly? How are you reelected as a dude? Like, your home, like, his home was literally saved during the Calder fire. Like, he owes those people the entire value of his home. And these people, like, I mean, that's what people are missing, is like, I don't vote based on D's and R's. Like, I might be fairly liberal, but I also grew up like understanding bow hunting and fly fishing, right? Like, I understand that culture and way of life. Like, if someone is going to be a Republican, but is going to do better for their community, great. But if that Republican's screwing all the hardworking people that are, putting out the time and fighting fires, like, get that person out of here. He's also a climate denier. He also denies race theory. Like, we've got a whole long list of that guy, like,
yeah, sounds like top notch.
dude, I have a great time when like I work with POW and Outdoor Alliance as well, which is another like, organization that gets people involved. And they'll put me in meetings with these people. Like I will have one-on-one meetings with people who spend most of their time in Washington, D.C. And sometimes it sucks, like, and I have to play like to their script where it's like climate change isn't real. And I'm over here like, well, it is, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about, like the people, how much the outdoor industry brings in economic gain to your region, right? And if they all pull out, sick, like all your people lost their jobs.
Perfect example, right? When you think about the economic gain or the economic impact to a community, let's just use Truckee as an example. That's where you live, right?
Yep.
You have your shoulder seasons, but then you have your big seasons, right? Winter, summer.
Yep.
If there's fires, there's no guests in the hotel rooms or going out to eat or renting bicycles or hiking or going to the grocery store. In the and then vice versa, in the winter, if there's no snow, same problem.
It sucks. Like the grocery store that I've been going to for I don't know how long is open less days a week now, because during the fires, like with smoke, there was no clientele. It wasn't enough to literally pay people $15 an hour to stock shelves. Like there are no employees, no one's getting work, and that's the reality. But like the outdoor industry is an $887 billion a year behemoth in the United States. Like that's not pennies. That's as much as like oil and gas. Like they are bringing in insane amounts of jobs, and like people going into shops and ancillary things. Like people go places and buy food and rent hotels in those places because they have the outdoor gear to go to those places with trails and rivers and ski resorts. And that is a huge industry in our country that people just ignore. I mean, it's wild that our entire sports and our entire, like, what would life be to you? I mean, you have a family, so I'm gonna ask someone who doesn't, maybe, because I was gonna say, what would life be without skiing and cycling, right? Like, what do you show your kids, right? Like, what do you show your family?
My son has asked me multiple times, have we started planning to go skiing this winter?
Yeah.
I saw that it snowed,
Yeah.
and I think that's a really, it's something that I grew up with as a child, learning to ski. And it's been very exciting for me to share that with my son. And I think that outdoor, that feeling, that crisp air, that smell, I can always remember the smell when it's going to snow, right? You know it in the air, you get out, you smell it, and you go, it's going to snow tonight. And everybody's like, nah. The next morning you wake up and you got it. And you're like, yes.
It's dusting. Yeah, dude. That's the way of life.
Powerful, right? And
yeah,
I think we take, and there's definitely a component of it if we look at it from the bigger picture. So when you think of outdoor enthusiast, that may not be a cyclist or a winter sport person. That could be a fisherman, a fly fisherman, a hiker, just somebody who's a bird watcher. That's an outdoor enthusiast. They're all going to be affected by these changes. And you don't think those birds' nests are going to go away if there's a fire?
No, I mean, the people who eat outdoors at restaurants, like they're outdoor enthusiasts. Like if it's smoky out,
nobody wants to sit outdoors,
sitting out in the deck. Like, no, like it. And if it's smoky out, like, and you're, barbecuing outdoors, you're not getting the same, same thing at all. Have at it. Clean. Better. Now we're better.
Yeah, there we go. Woo. Allergies are crushing me today.
See, but that's the thing, right? Like different times of years. You're getting it. Like,
that's too.
That's all part of it. That's all part of it, though. Like, I mean, you have different times for pollen in the air, for allergies, for smoke. Like, my mom has asthma, and that's like become a game changer as far as like living up in Tahoe.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. What do you do when your AQI is like 1,000? And you're like, well, even inside we have these like industrial air filters where it's like, we live in like a HEPA filtered lab now where it's just running all the time. It's wild, but no, I get it. Like, allergies, getting some rain, it's kicking things back up. Yeah, the world we live in is rapidly changing no matter what you like to do. And it's key that, all of that outdoor recreation or whatever we do is tied to just observing, right? Like that's all I can ask people to ever do is, take the places that matter to you, right? Like where do you have family memories of hikes? Like where have you seen birds or seen changes? The little nuances and patterns of like the city park or your favorite trail. That's like what drives people to care about places far away, right? Like no place is inherently special. Like we see, Chris Burkard's photographs or like something really pretty and you're like, wow, like I love Iceland. But if someone was like, here's a petition to save Iceland, I'm like, do I have 5 minutes? Like, I don't know. But that's the thing is like, if I think, how is Iceland related to the places I love, then I maybe do have that 5 minutes. I think that's what's wild. Like Iceland, I talked to Chris Burkard a while ago about this actually, and he's been going there more than anyone, right? Like so much. He's ridden his bike across every inch of that country.
We gotta go. We gotta get him, and we gotta go with him.
Oh, we're going that way. We're going that way. I have plans. We're doing things now. But the crazy thing is like Iceland sea level is dropping there because as the glaciers melt, there's something called isostatic rebound, and the rock basically is like weighted down in the core of the, or like in the mantle of the earth. And when the weight of the glacier comes off, the ground actually rises, and so you have all these fishing ports that are like way off of where the ocean is, and they can't even get the fishing boats into their processing plants anymore because sea level has dropped instead of risen in Iceland. And he was like, shit, like this whole time. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, you do all these crazy things, but it's these little things that we all miss.
How do you, yeah, see, but that's completely polar opposite to what a lot of people would think or hear is going to happen. Ocean levels are going to rise. They will rise in some areas that are,
going down. But yeah, it's the world's, it's about just observing, taking notice, and I think caring about, other people and caring about like, ourselves, like the things we do for passion or for work. And if those things are impacted by, extreme weather events or drought or all these other things, then we've got a stake in this. Like it's going to go on without us, but it's not like we're tied to the tracks, like all bundled up here waiting on the train. Like we are the conductor with our hand on the emergency brake, just like wide-eyed looking out the window being like, like, do we pull this? I don't know. Like that's what's crazy, right? And that's every time you go outdoors. Like I think about this all the time, where do I want to, like, I come back from a ride and you do the same, like maybe crack a beer, maybe go get a coffee, like do something with friends, and that's $5, right? Like whatever, that's worth it. It ends my day in a nice way. But that $5, I'm like, yeah, like every time I go outdoors, I should be giving $5 to, that local indigenous conservation group or that trail stewardship group, or, giving my 1% back to the planet. I didn't buy anything, but I used the land, and it's kind of all our responsibility to give back there, huh? So
yeah, that's true.
I bothered Mark Gainey about this, the guy who invented Strava, and I don't think I've sold him yet on the idea of like having people put in their PayPal and like give back based on where they ride. But I'm still going to bother him. I think it's a good idea.
That's a great idea. I think it could be really fun and really smart.
It's a cool platform, but I love that people are so competitive.
It into a betting thing. Turn it into where people say, well, if I beat this person's, turn it into a betting thing.
Is that legal in the United States? I don't know.
Basically, somebody says like, what if I said, we'll talk about this offline. Okay.
I love it. But you get it. Like you get the whole process, and it's from like everything from food. It's your life. Like you are an embodiment of this whole thing. Like you understand the intricacies of food and flavor down to how a cow is raised, like where it is raised, or a pig, like what it grew up in, all the way up to like you go places to ride bikes and teleski and do these crazy things. You've seen the whole spectrum, and you meet every single person in the spectrum. And if anyone is good at like convincing people to tie like life passions and doing some good in the world together, like,
I don't know.
Thanks for that.
It's one day at a time. I think I'm working towards it. I'm doing the best I can. Try to give people a larger voice to share it and get people to pay attention. So, well, that's
all you can do.
I've monopolized quite a bit of your time tonight, but we're gonna do our end of the show game, which we do all the time. Okay.
Beautiful.
There's no wrong answers. And it's just super straightforward and fun. All right.
Love it.
All right. Red or white wine?
Red.
Okay. Hamburger, hot dog?
I'd probably pick hamburger.
Ketchup or mustard?
Mustard every time, like with passion.
Whole grain or Dijon?
Oh man, that's we'll go with whole grain.
Okay. Nigiri, sashimi?
What am I having to drink with it? We'll go sashimi.
Dark beer, light beer?
Light beer. I am a lightweight at this point. Dude, the endurance racing, all the gravel has not been good for your beer intake. Like, no.
Okay. Chocolate, fruit?
You know, I'm a big fan of combining them for dessert, like some orange with a chocolate, but I'd probably pick chocolate most nights if it's dark.
And that was the next question, dark or milk, and you already answered it.
That's completely against my roots, being like Colombian and Swiss. I should be picking like milk chocolate, but here we are. Like I don't care for that at all. Like give me the dark chocolate, like 78% plus. Anything less, you can keep it. Like it's fine.
Noodles or pasta?
Pasta.
Dumplings or ravioli?
That's hard. Man, I've gotten really into momos recently, which are technically a kind of dumpling. So we'll go with dumplings.
Burrito or taco?
Burrito. I've never eaten a taco successfully without half of it coming out the back. Like, I'm just going to admit my mistakes right now, you know, like for all to see. Yeah.
That's great. I've never heard that one before. Okay. What is your go-to on the bike to eat for normal food?
Man, and it's always normal food nowadays. I'm gonna be honest. Like, you know, you get to a point where you don't just want like another.
Yeah, I know.
Another brick. You get it. Man, what is my go-to right now? I've started making like egg sweet potato burritos, and pretty much every race has started with one of those at like minute 45. They just have like a good mix of what I want. But yeah.
Okay. On your bike, when you're out backcountry skiing, what's your go-to? And for those of you folks who don't realize, 75% of what you carry out there backcountry freezes, so it's not always that easy.
Not easy at all. Like that's the thing. Is like, wow, do I want to eat like rock hard mango or like some pretty milk, like lukewarm soup? Man, like skiing's a hard one, right? I chipped my tooth on an apple once that I brought with me backcountry skiing.
Because it froze.
Because it froze. That was terrible.
So like for folks out there who have no idea, like you put a Snickers bar in your bag, forget it. You're going to break all of your teeth. Like,
oh, you're hopeless.
You're hopeless. Like this stuff doesn't, there's tricks, which that's why we have inside pockets and we put those things to stay warm on the inside. But inevitably you always screw up. You put your food in the back.
Always. Like that's the thing is I can't even say like almond butter sandwich because the almond butter gets like hard and frozen and you're like, cool. Like I've just learned to get really good at eating beforehand pretty much, or like bringing soup in like a little like container / like basically a coffee mug that has a screw on top. Like I'm really about the soup game. I grew up as one of those little ski groms that were like, this is so embarrassing. I can't believe I'm putting this on here. I would go to the cafeteria at the ski resort and like I got an allowance. My parents weren't like doting on me, right? This is when skiing cost like $25 for a lift ticket. And I would make it, like, those days are gone. Like it is 10 times that now. But I would bring a bowl and I would fill it with hot water from the coffee machine. And then I would put ketchup packets in there and stir it around and then get all the free crackers that are like at the counter and just like dip crackers in like ketchup soup with salt and pepper. I'm so glad like my parents definitely probably gave me enough money for food, but I was like, no, I'm keeping that for whatever children do with money these days. I don't know, but like,
oh my God, that's priceless.
So I'm still on like the tomato soup kick where like I'll bring that or like some squash soup with me. It brings back really warm, fuzzy memories of how far I've come from like ketchup water and crackers to being able to sort of cook, right?
Oh my God. I knew a person who used to go to a cafeteria and make condiment sandwiches because they used to have like lettuce, pickles, and they would make a sandwich. They would put everything inside.
You gotta do what you gotta do to make it through. I mean, yeah, you know, you look when you're a professional skier or like a professional ski guide, man, like I've sat in cafeterias after doing avalanche testing at ski resorts, and families will walk up and be like, "Do you want the rest of our fries? Like, we're not going to eat them." And I'm like, "How haggard do I look right now?" Like, you're like, I'm not a homeless person sitting in a ski resort cafeteria, but like, here people are like offering this guy with long hair their fries. It's great. Like, that's my life in skiing right now. Is need to pull a more professional look. Probably the tele skis are what's giving off the air of like, maybe that guy doesn't have a lot of money. He's pretty free.
He can afford the back of his bindings. That's usually what.
Yeah, no, they're feeling my rough life. So it's back end on ski food. You know, life goes.
And the last one is, what's your like guilty pleasure that you like?
Man, I don't have too many vices, you know, like my guilty pleasures honestly are like spoiling my dog and coffee. Like, I don't want to be a snob about coffee, but am I over here with like a fancy little kettle and like a pour over in the morning, like hand grinding my beans? Yeah, for sure. You know, like I like going to different coffee shops and buying all that. And that's my vice, is like a very expensive espresso coffee bar going on in the kitchen. But
I got one.
There could be worse ones.
I mean, trust me, there's definitely worse vices in the world than coffee.
Yeah, hopefully people gave like more exciting answers. But yeah, you know, like you gotta have something you dork out on, something that brings you a little bit of happiness every day.
So Dillion, if people want to follow you, why don't you shout out your Instagram? And for those of you at the end of this, there'll be a link to his Instagram as well as to Pal and the videos that he's been putting out.
Oh man,
to get some real great understanding of what's been going on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm on Instagram, at my name, Dillon.Osleger. And then my website is actually my nonprofit website, so sagetrail.org. And yeah, you know, I'll have 2 more films coming out in that same vein. One with Christopher Blevins and Specialized and Wahoo, and then the other one with Sarah Sturm, dorking out on pine beetles and dead forests, bike packing and forest fire. So there'll be some good stuff coming out, a little bit of content.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Folks, make sure you check out everything that Dillon's up to, and keep an eye out for the next one.